Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. Today I have a jazz legend in the house. He's a two-time Grammy Award winning jazz artist. He's also right now up for consideration for two more Grammys for his latest album, Outrun. I'm talking no other than the fabulous legendary jazz player, Marlow Rosado. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. I can let you talk all day long. You're gonna keep talking like that. Yeah,
Well,
man.
I believe in giving people their flowers.
Oh,
And I love, we're going to get into it later, but I was listening to one of your tracks um, with Chucho Valdez, and I like the switch of the tempo of the music. It was real good. I was vibing that because I like to listen to jazz because it helps me clear my mind, clear my thoughts,
right.
try to figure out what I want to do next, whatever it is, in my life. So I always love talking to a jazz artist or someone with a jazz background because you guys just think differently. You see music differently. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I enjoy that fresh air. Um, can you explain to me uh, what they categorize your music as Latin jazz? Can you explain what is the Latin jazz sound?
So, you know, the at the very root of the
Hmm.
word, I guess you would say, we define jazz first, right?
Hmm.
And we know what jazz is. Jazz is a combination of many different branches of the jazz tree, right? You got
Sure.
bebop, you got cool
Yeah.
jazz, you got smooth jazz, you got all kinds of jazz. But I guess at the end, what defines jazz is the harmonic structures and melodically what you do with the uh, when you take when you take the harder jazz,
Hmm.
you take things like a chord progression, what we call, like, let's say, 2-5-1 chord progression,
Hmm.
and you add extensions on the piano or on the guitar or whatever harmonically, and you add the ninth and the 13th, and you add all these things. When you do simple triads, you're talking about maybe pop music or rock and roll, that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
when you start adding all these extensions and you start adding all these colors
Hmm.
to these chords,
Okay.
when it starts making your face go like this,
Uh-huh.
that's when you starting to step away from pop music and starting
Okay.
to get a little deeper, right? And
Okay.
then there's also substitutions where usually in pop music you would do uh maybe that two chord to the fifth chord to the one chord, where maybe in jazz you go from the two chord maybe to the flat second chord, and you substitute that fifth with which is called a tritone substitution. All that stuff defines jazz,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Now you take all that jazz is,
Hmm.
and you bring in Latin percussion,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
congas, timbales, the
Right.
clave,
Oh,
the all that Latin percussion, and you start putting all that together, and you change the piano riffs from chords to montunos. You start to move away from traditional jazz
okay.
to Latin jazz. I think Latin jazz is, again, part of that tree, because you can go from bebop
Hmm.
to cool jazz, and although that's still American jazz, right?
Hmm.
Uh, it's still very different, and it's the rhythm. When you go to swing and the bass player is walking,
Right. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah. Yeah.
you got the walking bass line. That's swing.
Right.
In salsa, in Latin jazz, you don't have a walking bass line. You have an anticipated bass line on it anticipates the beats, and so I guess everything that makes Latin music Latin, added to the harmonic structure of jazz, is what what gives it the traditional Latin jazz name, right?
You
So I
you
think
get
that's the best way to describe what Latin jazz is.
you gave me an education of something that I can kind of understand it music a little bit better now. You when you mentioned the one to the two to the three, or even if you go to five, like R&B has a rhythm of one to the two to the three to and back to the one. Whereas jazz can actually break out of that. You can go to the one, to the two, skip the three, go, like you said, jazz can break out of what's
That's
supposed to
what
be.
jazz. That's what jazz is, right?
Gotcha.
It's this discovering all these crazy harmonies and all these crazy ways of approaching a melody and approaching a note, and it goes. I mean, if you listen to bebop, guys
Hmm.
like Coltrane
Right.
and Dizzy and Monk and those guys back in those days,
Hmm.
I mean, what they were doing was, and these guys, they were doing it when no one was doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And so today we do it, but it's all good. We learn from them,
No,
right?
it was just a history when you was explaining it, and then I said, "Oh, okay." Okay. So I kind of I understood where you was going, but it allowed me to understand the expression of different genres of music based on what is fundamental foundation of its roots. Whatever, because like you said, when someone says, "Oh man, they doing something it's not tradition, it's not normal," because sometimes something that has a foundation has a normal expression to it, rhythm to it. And the great thing about jazz is it can pull from all different elements and still set its own rules, right, of expression, depending on the artist on what they want to do. And that's one of the things that I love about jazz. um how does it feel when you won the two Grammys, and then now you're being considered up for consideration for Grammys again?
Well, uh, so I mean, to answer the first question,
Yeah, sure.
it feels amazing when an academy that's built of your peers
Sure.
votes to nominate you.
Right.
It tells you that if you understand the Grammy process, over 80,000 records are submitted every year.
Hmm.
And those 80,000 records are all divided into categories. And then you have your tropical records, your pop records, your rock records, your R&B records, your hip hop records, and all these crazy amount of records put together, they add up to about 80,000.
Wow.
And then you get nominated, which means that of all those 80,000, all these it's all narrowed down to 5 records per category. So it goes down from about 80,000 to maybe about 200 immediately.
Woo.
So you make it there and you're already nominated. You're one of the top 5 in your category. To many, 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 many people, that's already a win,
Correct.
right? You already won. But then to go further and to actually be the one record that wins in the category.
That's wow.
And so it really is a difficult feat to win a Grammy. You know, it it's difficult to get nominated, and then
Hmm.
I think it's more difficult to get nominated than to get the win.
Right.
Because when you get the nomination, you're getting it among thousands of records.
Right.
When you get the win, you're one of the top 5. Now the Academy doesn't vote at large. They only vote for those top 5 that were nominated. So with that said, I produce I produced many records this year, but for me, my own records, I produced 2. One of them is
Right.
a salsa record, and one of them is a Latin jazz record. The salsa record, well, and salsa is different from Latin jazz. Salsa is more
Correct.
commercial. Salsa is radio friendly. It's what, what people like to dance to at parties.
Sure.
Latin jazz is what we musicians like to sit down and listen to,
Gotcha.
right? So I have both. And on the salsa record, I have an invited artist, a very well-known guy. His name is Frankie Negron. He's the vocalist on that record. And then on the Latin jazz album, I have Chucho Valdez as my featured artist. And Chucho is a absolute legend.
Yes.
In the world of Latin jazz. He agreed to be part of this record. And so that to me is that's already a win for me, right? To have Chucho on the record. Now, with there you go. There he is. There he is right there. He's 80 years old.
Wow.
And has definitely has made his mark over and over and over again in the world of Latin music. And so there's voting going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, today is the last day. Probably in about the next hour, voting will be complete. So the Academy has been voting for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Now, mind you, we're still in that beginning process in all the records. So right now it's all the records.
Okay.
If I'm lucky enough to get a nomination, then I go from being part of that big 80,000 record pool to top 5 in my category.
Which breaks down to overall 200.
Yeah, and that overall 200.
Yeah, right. Okay. Gotcha.
So
that's like you said, that's a feat in itself.
Oh
and
yeah.
Then and it's still come away with the Grammy. So you segued to 2 of my questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it in order. But how does one produce or compose a jazz composition when there's not singing? And so the reason I mean when it's not singing, because singing, you're writing down the lyrics, right? Coming up with the lyrics and the arrangement. So, but when it's just a musical composition, how do you put something like that together? How do you put that together and produce it?
Well, that usually the voice lays on top of the melody, right?
Mm-hmm.
The voice is the melody, the melodic part of the. So the only difference is that there are no lyrics, but the melody is still there.
Okay.
So what you do is you still construct the melody, right?
Okay.
It all depends what part of your inspirational bone was tickled before you sit down. Sometimes you sit down and you start playing with chords and you sort of like these chords and where they're going, and then you construct the melody on top of those chords.
Okay.
Or sometimes you have a melody in your head and then you construct the melody first and then you accompany the melody with the chords. So
okay.
It's almost like saying, I mean, how do you, if you're an athlete,
right?
What makes a baseball player know when to swing, when not to swing? How to, it's you start doing this. It's part of your talent. It's part of your makeup.
Gotcha.
And it's all feeling. Sometimes you could take a basketball player and blindfold him, and he can still feel the basket.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You blindfold the basketball player, and you sort of face him in the direction of the basket, and it's just feeling, man. You become one with the chord, with it's the same thing.
I get it. Just part of your DNA. Just part. It becomes part of your DNA.
You become part of your instrument. You become part of the music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most instrumentalists don't have to look at the instrument to play it. I certainly don't have to look at the piano to play it. you know, once I put my fingers on the piano, they start going. They do what they do.
Amazing, amazing. Is it? I told someone I had interviewed singer Beth Griffin, and we were talking about she was talking about she wished she would have kept going with the piano. She can play, but she wished she would have stayed on top of it, to play at a certain level. And I was telling her, I say, see, God knows who to get certain gifts, because I said if I could play and I could sing, I'll be arrogant. I'd be.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
I
probably go ahead.
I can't sing. I mean, like you
Uh,
just said, God knows what He's doing, right?
yeah.
Because He made me a piano player producer, and I'm already arrogant. If He would have given me a voice, oh boy, it would have been crazy.
So it would have been crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just one of those things. Because I was before he passed, I was a big Joe Sample um, fan, and
Yeah.
my favorite album from him was Invitations, and
Okay.
so I love the piano, especially being playing in its in a jazz form, and it just certain people I can feel just what you were talking about their particular expression, when that that's that so and so sound, that's their sound. No matter what they're playing, you kind of know their
It's
sound.
them.
Yeah.
I've been compared many times to Thelonious Monk. Now,
Wow.
now that's where that all culture goes away, everything goes away. It's just raw uh musical mentality. Uh and I think the reason why I've been compared to Monk is because I'm a diehard fan of a piano player. His name is Eddie Palmieri. Eddie
Okay.
Palmieri is one of our biggest Latin jazz piano players
Okay.
ever. He's a guy. He's out of New York. He's pretty old now. He's in his 80s.
Okay.
But I grew up listening to Eddie Palmieri music.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Palmieri is a Latin jazz / salsa artist.
Okay.
He was in Woodstock. He long, long, long career.
Sure.
Later in my life, when I was able to sit with Eddie and have conversations with Eddie,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that Eddie himself learned a lot from Monk.
Okay.
They actually were friends.
Okay.
So I think my influence from Eddie, sort of loops me back around to Monk because
Right.
because I play like Eddie Palmieri. You know, when people that don't know Eddie but know Monk hear me, they say you
Got
sound like
yeah.
Monk, and
Right.
it's through Eddie Palmieri. Now, mind you,
Amazing.
it's not that I listen to Eddie but not to Monk. I mean, I'm
Right.
a diehard Monk fan. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I didn't discover Monk first. I had discovered Eddie
Eddie
first. I
first.
learned about Monk, years later
Sure.
when I was going to college, and I started getting into all the jazz, the hard jazz musicians. I
Mm-hmm.
discovered Monk, but by this point, I already had a style which resembled the Eddie Palmieri style. So, when you listen to Monk, you say, okay, I can see where Eddie gets all his ideas,
Right.
and Monk gets his ideas from nowhere. You know, Monk is that's a bad boy. I mean, he
Yeah,
used to
that's why
stand
when you
up.
said it, I was like, I it, but here's a good part, Marlo. At least that's a compliment.
Well, Monk used to stand up before he used to play his piano solos, and he used to get himself dizzy. He used to go around and circle. If you
Mm,
haven't watched it, check out, for you and for your audience,
sure.
check out Straight No Chaser.
Straight no chaser. Okay.
Yeah, that was one of his biggest songs. There's a documentary called Straight No Chaser,
Yeah.
and it's Monk. It's him.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's
Right. I'm gonna check
his
that out.
son. His son's a drummer. His
Okay.
son is a drummer. Yeah, and his son is a drummer who plays standing up. So, you know, a little bit of
Ah,
Monk's craziness
how,
sort of seeped over to his son.
I gotta see that. I'm
Yeah,
trying. When you just said it, I'm trying. How you playing standing up?
yeah,
Because
that's
I'm looking at playing the bass part of the drum. So that's like, how you doing that stuff?
yeah.
Wow. Um, Tell me about the new your latest project, Outrun, and what were you trying to accomplish with that project there?
Okay. So you see
Or
that
run, I
word
meant.
autumn
Aurum, I meant.
or
Yeah.
autumn, right? Uh, I'll explain the word first.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I live in Miami.
Right.
Uh, the Cuban, I'm Puerto Rican, but the Cuban influence in Miami is
It's huge.
huge, right? And Cubans have brought their religion to the forefront here in Miami.
Okay.
And the Cuban religion is, you know, is Yoruba, which is really not Cuban. It really is an African religion.
Okay.
That's where you have. You remember that one year that Beyonce dressed up in yellow when she was pregnant and she
Yeah.
was in the Grammys
Yeah.
and she was dressed up in yellow.
Yeah.
She was dressed up like an African goddess called Ochun,
Okay.
right? Now,
Okay.
the reason we all know that just by looking at her here in Miami is because that's the biggest religion in Miami, Yoruba,
Okay.
right? Yoruba's it really is one of the deepest, oldest religions in the world, and it's got all its roots are in Africa. It's got a
Okay.
lot of it takes a lot of heat and a lot of beating
Mm-hmm.
because of its sacrificial customs.
Okay.
And you know, they hold on, let me decline this. And so,
Uh-huh.
but nonetheless, it's a very strong and deep religion.
Okay.
Living in Miami for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
that's become sort of something I follow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up Catholic. I still have my Catholic faith. But this is something that I also strongly believe in the influences of this religion.
Mm-hmm.
I've also visited countries like Nepal, Japan, and China, where I've gotten very much into Buddhism and stuff. So I'm not a one religion kind of guy. You know, I've discovered that there's so much in so many, you know, philosophies and religion.
Mm-hmm.
So Orun is the the I'm trying to find the word in English. He's supposed to be like the gatherer of the dead souls
Okay.
before he gives them a destination,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when someone dies, they're given a destination, and they're given that destination by Orun.
Okay.
So this is if you look at the album cover, I'm
Right.
like it looks like I'm growing out of the earth, right? It's a very deep cover. It's you know it's not your traditional pretty cover. You know, it's a deep cover. Now, my purpose calling the record Autumn and and giving it that kind of a cover
Mm-hmm.
is because I want you to look at that and I want you to say, "Damn, I gotta listen to the music that's in here,"
Gotcha.
because the music resembles that artwork. Nothing in this record is bubblegum, uh, sweet music. Everything is very hardcore, very deep. It's something that you would hear from a guy like Monk or from a guy like Coltrane, just not in that style.
No,
But
right, right, right. I get you.
you know, when you hear something like Donna Lee or Scrapple from the Apple from John Coltrane, you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there saying like, "Damn, you know, this is just way out of control." Well, I think that if you look at this album cover, that's what I want you to, before you listen, that's what I want you to start to get the vibe that what's in here? I gotta listen
Right,
to this.
right. Yeah, something's in here. I gotta take a listen.
Yeah,
And it was so funny because that was my thought when I saw the album cover. I said, hold on, where's he going with this?
yeah.
I gotta listen. I gotta listen.
It's
So when I played listen to you and Chucho and the exchange of you guys playing and the tempo changes of the music. What was that like working with such an iconic figure such as Chucho? What was that like for you working with him?
to me, it's first of all, it's very satisfying to know that he would work with me.
Okay.
And even the way he sees me, his comments about me, the way he views my playing, we play the same instrument. We're both piano players.
Correct.
There's an interview on YouTube of him talking about me and this project. And if I ever think I have to feel depressed for something,
Mm-hmm.
I should just go to that interview.
Play the
Uh,
interview.
and it's I'm in disbelief that this gentleman sees me that way. And
Gotcha.
and I mean, I've had the honor of having some of the top piano players that I grew up listening to on most of my records.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many legendary piano players featured on my albums. I never thought I would reach a guy like Chucho.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it does tell you you're good, you're done, you did it. You know,
Right.
you,
Yeah.
you did
And
it.
and that
If I never record another record, it's
yeah.
solid. It's there.
And that's that I know what that's like, when you have someone that you admire and then they give you a compliment about, that they like what you're doing.
Right.
And and it's what's the cool part is when you're just being yourself, when you're just
Yeah.
doing what you normally do,
What you do.
but
You do
it
what you do.
but it wows them. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's what like puts a smile on your face, and you like, I look, like you said, I don't have to do anything else now. You know,
That's it. That's it.
that
You're
that's
good.
it. That's it.
You did it.
And I saw an interview you did, not well, I read an interview you did, and you were talking about this album excited you. What is it about the album that excites you? Far because you put out a few albums. What's got this album got your juices flowing?
You know, most of all of my records are salsa records.
Mm-hmm.
Salsa is commercial. That's what keeps you working. That's what
Right.
keeps you out there going to salsa festivals all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Salsa is what keeps you in the clubs. Uh, but during the pandemic, there was no work.
Right.
And so I've been wanting to make an album for years that is, that goes back to my roots, what I went to school for, what I studied. I've
Right.
been wanting to make an album that explores all that.
Okay.
And so I took the opportunity to do this during the pandemic because there was no work. So I finally got to the album that I've been wanting to do
Okay.
for many, many, many years.
Sure.
And this is that album.
Okay.
So when you do a salsa record, you're concentrated on commercialism, on what's gonna try to see what you can make the radio with,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But now with a record like this, the last thing you're thinking about is commercialism. You
Gotcha.
know, it's about the music.
Just
And this
strictly
record
about the
really is
music.
about the music.
Okay. Okay. Well, hey, I need to know when you hit Atlanta now. I need to be in the place when you hit Atlanta. I gotta. Um, is this your? Do you consider this to be your best work, or just the next the next work?
Well, it's my best work up to now. I hope that I can surpass it uh, with the next one.
Right.
Uh, I think we should strive strive for making the next one better and the next one better and so on, right? I
Hmm.
could tell you that it it's definitely one of my jewels. Definitely
Hmm.
one of my jewels.
What this I didn't even have this as a question, but it just popped in my head, so I just got to ask you. Um, how does one look at music, and say, "Hey, I think this was my best song," versus sometimes what the public says. You know how sometimes the fans we'll meet you or whatever, like, "Oh, Marlow, this album or this song, I think this was your best song," and you may get a lot of people agree with it, right? And but you may look at, or some of your contemporary in the business, as far as musicians, right? Like yourself will say, "Yeah, that was good. That was a wonderful masterpiece." But if you go on this album and you listen to this song Marlowe did, I think he was playing at his best right here. How how
Well,
do- how do
and
you how do you balance that?
and I think it's all a matter of personal taste
Okay.
because there's songs on my records
Mm-hmm.
that I can't imagine why they've never gotten picked up or anything because even recording them, I thought this is the best song on this record.
Right.
But you'd be surprised what people are attracted to.
Okay.
Uh, these are like people. Songs are like people. You like one, you like this person, and the other person doesn't.
Gotcha.
And you find that this dude is, super cool, super chill, and then you talk to a friend and you say, "Hey, man, I love this dude. This dude is awesome." And like, I don't like that guy, man. And
Yeah.
and and songs are like people. Some like I don't really like what he did with that song.
Right.
I think he went too deep. He went too. I don't like what he did harmonically. Remember, everybody also has a ear
Mm-hmm.
that listens to things and is attracted to certain things.
Gotcha.
There's harmonies, and this is all studied stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There are harmonies that manipulate your senses and your moods. And if you're the kind of guy that just likes to be in a happy place all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna like like minor harmonies
Mm-hmm.
that are gonna sort of alter your mood to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna like major happy harmonies. Uh, if you're a dark person and you just like that deep
Mm-hmm.
darkness, you're gonna like all that modal stuff that doesn't move a lot, stays around the same kind of chords.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Miles Davis was an expert at. You see,
Mm-hmm.
Miles Davis, he used to put you in this trance. He wasn't the kind of guy that would give you very happy music. That wasn't
Right.
Miles,
Right.
right? But he would put you in this place where you were like, so you had to sort of be a little bit like that. You have to sort of, your ear has to like that kind of stuff. So, you know,
I get it. Or you have to be one that's very versatile in
right. And you got to be
your
able to
taste
listen to
bud.
music.
Yeah, yeah. Gotcha. Who or what inspires Marlowe?
That's funny because who inspires me primarily is someone outside of the music world.
Okay.
Uh, one of my biggest sources of inspiration is a Spanish painter called Salvador Dali. I
Okay.
don't know if you've heard the name. Uh, Dali is he died back in 1987. He's a
Okay.
surrealist painter.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a Picasso kind of guy.
Okay.
This is a big one of the biggest names in contemporary art.
Okay.
And for some reason, he his artwork gets into my eyes the right way and sort of changes my chemical balance.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
I wanna if I want to sit down and get deep
Mm-hmm.
and really get myself into a weird place,
Uh-huh.
nothing does it better than
His
checking out
paintings.
Salvador Dali art
Okay.
or
Okay.
so.
Okay. What what artists influence you? And I say that I asked that question. That's my final question. What artists influence you? But I asked that question from a context of it doesn't have to be a jazz artist. It can be, it could be, but just what what artists
Look,
you're influenced by.
like I said to you earlier, one of
Mhm.
my I grew up listening to Eddie Palmieri,
Right, Eddie.
very big influence on the way I play piano.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I grew up listening to a lot of salsa music, so there's a lot of salsa artists that have influenced me one way or another.
Okay.
Uh, Sometimes I listen to a song, a salsa song,
Okay.
and and it sounds like something that I know that I like. And when I
Uh-huh.
go and I try to see who was the producer,
Right.
there are producers that
Okay.
that have always had my ear
Gotcha.
even before
Okay.
I was producing.
Okay.
So I think you're influenced
Mm-hmm.
by many people. My one of my favorite artists is Eddie Palmieri, like I keep mentioning,
Right.
but influential artists, there's many, right? Because I think you take a little bit from a producer, you take a little bit from an artist, you take a little bit
Sure.
from a singer, you take a little bit from a painter, you take a little bit, and when you put all that together, you create a style.
Correct.
But definitely, influences. You should be influenced by many people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not listening enough. If you're not influenced by at least a handful of artists and musicians, you just not done enough listening in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
I always felt that way. That, like you said, you can take a look. Like I said, I listen to jazz. I listen to R&B. I listen to gospel. Right. I listen to hip
And in
hop.
all these areas, there's got to be people that influence you.
Correct. Correct. And what's so funny is that my two favorite music is gospel and jazz, because they both speak to me in a way that other music
Will
doesn't.
never.
Yeah,
Right.
but at the same time, even with let's say hip hop or rap, you want to call it, it's artists for me that lyrically, um, I didn't have to figure out. I like metaphors, I like similar, but I don't like too much of it. I like
Okay.
I'm from the old school. Used to say if you got something to say, make it plain. Make it plain where
Yeah.
everybody can understand. What it is that you're trying to convey or say. And like you say, everything is subjective. I did an interview, Marlow, with Robert Scoop Jackson, brilliant sports journalist, and we got to talking about that so for so long this GOAT debate. Is it Jordan? Is it LeBron? Is it Kareem? And he made a
It's
one
Jordan.
he made he made a wonderful thing. He said, and I put it out and I said, I'm ending the GOAT debate. And what he said was, why are you debating someone? And you mentioned it earlier when I asked you when you said music is like people. And he said it's all subjective. He said he believes Jordan is the greatest, right? He said, but
Right.
his father said Oscar Roberts. He said, but how am I argue that with a man that averaged a triple double his whole career? you know he said, but that's his flavor, that's who he likes.
Right.
So why am I arguing with you or trying to get you to change your opinion of what you like? If that's what you like, that's just what you
Right.
you know what
Well, I think you know I think undoubtedly in my eyes it's Jordan.
yeah,
I mean, uh, I don't know where LeBron is going to be 20 years from now.
sure.
I don't think Jordan's been on the court for at least 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
and he's still a huge name. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
For I had Jordan there, and I didn't knock him down because of I thought, you know, LeBron was better, whatever. I just started looking into deeper of Kareem. And so when I started to see a man won at every level from high school to college, they widened the lane because of him.
yeah,
In his time, they outlawed dunking the basketball because of him. That's where the sky hook, came from. And then for a man to be the all-time leading scorer and never shot a three-pointer. And I
right,
was that's kind of amazing to me. Like, what? Never shot a three point. So all these are either, free throws or, two pointers, right?
right,
But by the time, of course, I just really kind of knew who Kareem was. He was later on in his career, right? I saw him
right.
when the evolution of Magic Johnson was coming, but it's just I started to go back and started to dig. Now the amazing thing for me with Michael Jordan, right, was just his every time I thought Jordan was going to lose, you know, because I kept making up excuses. I said, okay, well, he won this one because he hadn't faced another superstar. So, okay, now he's getting ready to play the Lakers. He's going up against Magic. Boom, he wins that one, right? So then when he went up against Barkley, I was like, well, Barkley is hungry. This, that. I don't know. I think it's just time for boom. He wins it. Like every time there was an obstacle, I
And
thought.
if you had and if you even dared to win against Jordan, be careful the next time he gets you, because he used to come back and destroy you.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. The
like
second
if
time was worse than the first.
yeah, I mean, and the that body, I mean, who moves their body that way? I don't think there's ever been a
Um,
player that can manipulate their body the way that, I mean, this guy would jump and in the air he'd do all kinds of crazy shit with his body, and then before you, and the ball was all over the place, and then
I
and
saw
he
an
still,
interview. Yeah, I saw an interview. He talked about his hands, and he was talking about how far his thumb was from this finger, how far this thumb was from this finger. And he
yeah,
said the only other person that had the same type of hands was Dr. J. And he said, if you notice those two guys, Jordan and Dr. Once they got in the air, they could just move the ball however, wherever
yeah,
they wanted. And he
yeah.
said,
In order to put to even the playing field, you had to make a bigger ball for
yeah.
Jordan.
And
Yeah,
they would be able to, Jordan and Dr. J would just could just take the ball off the dribble, with their hands, just pick it up like and he said there's no defense for that. Like you can't defend that.
exactly,
Because I
exactly.
meant, like you said, not only does he have the hang time, but because I got big hands, I can actually move the ball. You thinking you're
Right.
gonna block it? I just move it over here.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, because he's
So
holding it.
yeah. But Marlo, I appreciate you coming on the show, blessing us with your presence. Praying for you that you get the nomination and get two more Grammys.
Hope so.
The stack. Please let me know when you come into Atlanta. I would love to see you live and to be able to see your brilliance live. So
We'll definitely stay in touch. It
yeah,
was a
most
pleasure to be
definitely.
on your show. Thank you for bringing my music to an audience that otherwise probably would not see it, but not hear it. So I appreciate the bridge. And this should happen a lot more often, right? That we can bridge music from one community to another, because music is amazing, and it should, the music that we all make should be heard by everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
So I
yeah, I would.
appreciate.
Yeah, I would love to try to bring you back on somewhere like in January. Maybe have you and horn player Johnny Britt on and just talk about the different genres within jazz. Because some people look at jazz as just one big thing, right?
Yeah,
And it's different breakdowns
yeah.
of
Jazz
that
is very
that you
broad.
that you talked about earlier today. So I would love to bring you back on, so maybe Jamie, before the Grammys, and be able to do something like that. So once again, like I said, thank you for blessing us with your presence. Please make sure you stay safe and continue to stay blessed.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for bringing my music out to a wider audience. I
No
appreciate that.
problem. No
All
problem.
right.